Astrology brings in more information that we almost eliminate by sticking to this structure that doesn't really exist. It's something that's been ultimately made up, and it works for the society structure, but we also know that Earth and nature doesn't really work on society's timeline. Hi, my name is Sheena Denise. I'm a master of many things. So I'm an astrologer, a certified astrologer with the Canadian Association. I'm a Reiki master teacher. I'm a tarot reader. Ultimately, you could say I'm a healer. I think most healers end up coming through their healing journey because they're searching for something within themselves and they don't really know how to access it. Out of this experience, I have ended up opening a space called One People TO. One People TO is really a space to invite, celebrate, and appropriately compensate Black, Indigenous, people of color, including the mandate that's anti-oppressive, queer positive, and really focused on eliminating and dismantling the systemic issues that really highlight anti-Black racism in society. Really, ultimately, what I like to say is turn our trauma into treasure and do that in a way that can really end up being empowering and enlightening. And so I'd hope that you come on this journey with me to learn a little bit about astrology. So for this first video, we're going to talk about the basics of astrology. There's so much to do with astrology, and we can talk about degrees and the mathematics, but to start really simple, we're just going to start with the signs and how the signs align with houses. There are 12 signs and 12 houses, and so from Aries to Pisces, we'll go through basically what each sign means and how it's associated with that house and a time frame of the lifespan. So let's, when we talk about astrology and astrology signs, well, let's talk first, I guess, maybe a little bit about what is astrology? Astrology was born essentially before astronomy. So astronomy has become this scientific way of studying the stars. Astrology is studying the conversation between the stars. And really we know that everything is interconnected. Our bodies are interconnected. We know that when the moon is full, people are more expressive. The moon actually rules the tides of the waters in our body, but of course all over the globe. That's one piece. Then two, when we think about astrology specifically, so is the study of the conversation and how the conversation affects our own life. And because there's so much to do with astrology, we can use astrology in so many ways. Most people know astrology by being able to have their birth chart read. So when you have your birth chart read or your natal chart, that's the sky at the time of your birth. So that's just like the picture of the sky and how the placement that you've been blessed with, essentially, or bestowed with, maybe is the better word. Even when we think about how astrology works, it doesn't have to be a destined life. It can really give you a blueprint for what is possible, and also to really allow you to find out where you may come across patterns or cycles or habits that you can foresee to be able to maneuver and mitigate. Then when we think about the astrology sign specifically, really you'd need to think about the sky as like a circle or a pie, and then divide that pie up into 12 pieces. So each piece represents a sign as well as a house. So there are 12 houses and 12 signs. Each sign corresponds with a house number. So starting with the first sign, that would be Aries, that's the first house, all the way around to the last sign, which is Pisces, and that's the 12th house. If we were to lay a pie, the pie of the sky, the 12 signs, up against the life cycle of each person, we can also really define how each sign really speaks to a point and period in each person's life, and also to how that person as an Aries or as a Taurus or a Cancer may show up and express certain aspects of that period of life. So if you're a Cancer, for example, Cancers represent the period of the timeline between 21 and 28. That's really when we start to have our most significant partnerships and relationships, and really start to think about like what a family looks like for us. And that's really what Cancer is all about. And so let's kind of get a little bit deeper into what the signs and the houses mean. The Gregorian calendar is what everyone basically on a grand scale in the world uses as their calendar base. We know that the Gregorian calendar has 365 days, and we work on a 24-hour timeline, 24 hours being one day. But the revolutions of the sun and the moon actually show us that we live more than 24 hours in one day. It's actually about 24 hours and a half. So we actually have 366 days. That's sometimes why we end up having a blue moon or a 13th moon in a year when there are really only 12 months. So this would speak to why we have a little bit of extra time in the calendar. Sometimes why the Gregorian calendar doesn't really give us the fullness of the experience that we're living, because we've shortened it. Astrology brings in more information that we almost eliminate by sticking to this structure that doesn't really exist. It's something that's been ultimately made up, and it works for the society structure, but we also know that Earth and nature doesn't really work on society's timeline. So when we talk about like astrology signs, there are 3 different modalities. So we know about the elements, so fire, water, earth, and air, and there are 12 signs, so there are 3 signs per element. There are also what we call modalities. So the modes are really the energy of the sign. So there are 3 modes: fixed, cardinal, and mutable. And because there are 12 signs and 3 modalities, there are 4 signs per modality. When we think about the cardinal signs, these are the signs that start at the beginning of each season. This is why we think of them as initiating signs that really start things, that come up with the ideas, that really, they're not so much the people that get the things done, they're the people that inspire other people and really come up with the initiative to begin something. So it's always the opposite signs. So Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. The mutable signs are the end of the sign. So this is when signs are changing, or when seasons are changing, when you can see the evolution of the experience. So Gemini is a mutable sign, and of course the opposite sign is Sagittarius. And then also too, Pisces and Virgo. When we think of, how these signs are really coming to a space of change. And so these are often people who will be able to be flexible, able to change at a moment's notice. They can be spontaneous, and they're able to mitigate and maneuver, I think, much easier especially than a fixed sign would be able to be. And of course, much easier than a cardinal sign would do as well. The fixed signs are all about the stability and the kind of like a stationary energy of getting things done, of really sticking things out. And so that would be Aquarius and Leo, as well as Taurus and Scorpio. And so these are the people that really kind of drill down and focus on what it is that they need to get done. And even if they're recruiting other people, they're really focused on the outcome and execution of what is needed. There are 3 main signs that we really focus on are the sun sign, the moon sign, and the rising sign, or the rising or ascendant is another way to say it. So your sun sign is the point and the day where the sun is in the sky. Your sun sign, being your identity and how you show up in this lifetime, is different from your moon sign, whereas your moon sign is how you express your emotions. And so the sign that your moon is in will color how you show up and how your emotions are expressed. So say, for example, you're a sun in Leo, and so you're expected to be very expressive, but your moon may be in Capricorn. And so your moon in Capricorn is very, can be reserved, can be very internal or structured, or wanting to feel safe enough to be able to express. And so sometimes that could be a competing priority or competing expression. And And so sometimes that's why people don't align with their sun sign, because their moon may be overpowering the energy of the sun. Lastly, the rising sign or ascendant sign is the time you were born. And so your ascendant is ultimately your public sign, your career sign, how people that don't really know you know you. And so this is like who you are at work, who you are with acquaintances, or in spaces where you are probably networking. Whereas your sun sign is oftentimes known as like your bedroom, so who you really are. And sometimes this is why it's difficult to show up as who you really are. And your rising sign is who you feel comfortable being until people truly know you. For people that have the same rising sign and the same sun sign, I often find they're fairly well integrated because they express who they naturally are in their day-to-day life. So thank you so much for joining me for this video. If you would like to continue following my journey and following me on the socials, you can check them out here. So definitely check out One People TO and the work that I'm doing there. And if you enjoy this video, definitely like and leave a comment. And if you can subscribe because you want to follow what Queer Collective is doing. And if you want to find out anything else about how astrology applies to you specifically, to your chart, if you want to get a reading or even just more content in this way, reach out to let us know what you want to see. Right on. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.